Welcome back to another episode of Call It RevOps, and today we're talking about something that I think is super interesting, which is this idea on how CMOs and CROs are actually incentivized to disagree. So sales and
100%.
marketing, yeah, I mean, and it's not
100%.
new. It's not new. Sales and
Yeah.
marketing have always been at odds, but what's new is how visible it is becoming to the boards, right? People are actually seeing this in a real scenario, especially when tough questions get asked. So growth is harder, budgets are going to be tighter, and good economy, bad economy, budgets always seem to be shrinking. And the tension between the CMO and the CRO, it's not just annoying, it's risky.
Yeah. And I want to clarify, like this isn't about alignment. I feel like that topic, no one really gives a shit about anymore. Like no one wakes up and says, you know what, I really need to align with the department. This is about credibility, power, and really who's going to own the revenue story and what happens when things go sideways, right? Like when we say that CMOs and CROs aren't incentivized to agree, we're really pretending otherwise if we disagree with that statement. They are not. They're two different mentalities, two different departments. And this is why your go-to-market motion keeps breaking. Because the leadership, let's forget alignment on every other level. Leadership isn't incentivized. There's no reason for them to get on the same page. Fundamentally, there's no reason why a CMO and a CRO needs to be aligned, and leadership in businesses incentivize it. Like they're like, yes, like it's kind of like illegal fighting. Like leadership is just throwing money on the ring and betting on one person versus the other person, and they're the ones in the ring going at it.
You commonly have heard the best way to have a lot of people come to your store is to have the exact same kind of store open across the street, like two gas stations. It actually gets more people there. I mean, CMOs and CROs are designed to disagree. Not by accident. They're different jobs and they have different survival games. For a CMO, I think that's the idea that it's built around influence and demand gen and awareness, whereas a CRO role is really a number and a forecast and a clear scoreboard. If you aren't hitting those numbers, that's a problem. So two completely different people, two completely different roles in two completely different sets of goals or things that they need to do to actually make their job a success.
Yeah, I mean, like the CRO survives and is pretty much judged on being right and being right now. Like as of
Yeah,
yesterday,
yeah,
as of your sales kickoff in January, as of 2 weeks ago, that is when the CRO, and that is how the CRO has to thrive, because once again, it's based off on a clear cut forecast. Well, a CMO survives by being right eventually, right?
hmm yeah,
And within those two statements, that's where the pressure hits, right? The CRO can point to a number and say, we're not hitting this. And the CMO has to explain this narrative, like this gap of what's going to happen in 3 months. And the CRO is like, hey, you didn't do this last week.
yeah,
And a
yeah.
CMO at that point is be like, well, it's a long-term play. And that is why that distrust starts immediately. And I mean, I wouldn't say immediately. That's why the distrust starts, and that's why immediately those conversation points break down. And
Yeah.
the way that everything is being incentivized in order to, instead of being judged as a business for success, we're judging two different departments that control the trajectory of your business in completely two different, I mean, time periods, right?
Yeah.
Like we're like one is right now, the other, hey, let's see what we did in 4 months.
Yeah, I mean one you could point to and pull up and say, okay, well, how much revenue did you generate? And then marketing has to say, well, how much revenue did you help generate? Well, marketing in that scoreboard, it's very easy for marketing to be like, well, I mean, we're doing our job, but on the flip side, it's a little bit more difficult for the CRO. If you were to switch those
Could you
shoes,
imagine a buying time frame of like 12 months? Like we worked with a company that
yeah,
had a buying time frame of 12 months. How is a CRO and a
mhm,
CMO supposed to be incentivized? And how does a CMO even show, to your point, influence on an opportunity that took 12 months, right? Like
yeah.
there's so many variables that just forces them to hate each other.
Yeah, and if the market perception is what tipped that person in favor, is that being accounted for anywhere? How do you track
Yeah.
that as well? Both of these roles have very challenging circumstances. And I think that kind of leads into, maybe let's talk about CMOs first, because marketing seems to always end up on the defense, right? When revenue slows down, the conversation doesn't start typically with the sales execution, usually starts with pipeline quality. We're not able to close these deals because the leads that we're getting, the people that we're talking to, they don't see the value. They're not getting it. We're not making sense. So marketing becomes an easy place to kind of look for that particular narrative, if you will.
Right. Well, and that's why the thing is, like, marketing is not losing in your scenario, or in your example, it's not losing credibility because it's bad. It's losing credibility because it can't prove it right now. Once
Yeah,
again, marketing
exactly.
is long term, and the CRO is saying we don't have a lot of leads. Why? We have a quota to hit this month. We have a quota to hit this quarter. And the way that credibility marketing loses credibility because it cannot prove causality the way sales can. Sales is very easy. It's a numerical number. A numerical number? I guess it's a
Yeah,
numerical way of
for sure.
measuring things, right? This is the number that we have to hit. And that's where bad leads start coming down the pipeline, because then in that case, when marketing ends up on the defensive, it says, well, give me more leads. And then, marketing says, all right, I'll give you more leads. We
Yeah.
open the floodgates. Here's 1,000 leads. Now
Hmm.
work with them, right? The conversation then shifts from strategic kind of game plan to how many leads do I get? I'm going to follow up with them. And that's really where, and in that moment, the CMO can't explain impact in business terms. The CRO controls the room. Like, they're
Yeah.
the ones who are like, hey, we have 1,000 leads, get at them. Is one of them
Yeah.
going to close? We'll figure it out.
Well, and the fight for the narrative kind of comes up, right? Because when you think about the modern technology stack that we have available across sales, marketing, customer success, product, really, data was intended to be introduced to help settle these debates. So if something's
Yeah.
not going right, where's the data leading us? Where's the data saying it? But it actually made it worse because attribution models, dashboards, and influence reports don't really clarify ownership. They just turn it in kind of into an exercise, right? Like, I hate to say blame game, but in many respects, that's kind of what it is.
I wouldn't even say it's a blame game. I think it's a version of that, and it's also a look at me. I did such a cool thing.
Yeah.
This is mine. If you haven't seen our episode on revenue architecture versus revenue theater, we dive into this very specific conversation about how analytics and actually attribution, multi-touch attribution, isn't really about truth anymore. It's about control. It's a theater that we're presenting and a narrative that we're controlling based off on the department that has control of it at that moment in time. And whoever controls that revenue narrative controls budget, headcount, and that's it. Like, and that's why these fights never end, because they're not about data, they're about leverage. I have leverage because I did this, so therefore I should get more budget. And then at that point, where is budget going to get taken away from? If your budget is X amount of dollars, well, you're going to start pulling internally from different departments. That's why ops always feels like they're understaffed. So the long-term play that marketing has to do doesn't materialize in the now. It materializes in the future. Well, CRO has the budget now. So now the future comes and you're like, hey, what's our plan? We don't have any budget for it. That's how these budget conversations kind of like, transpire over time.
Yeah. And I mean, if you needed a stronger reason to incentivize two people to disagree, put budget in there, right?
That's it. Yeah, that's
if
it,
you
man.
if you
That's
wanted to
it.
create tension, you add in a budget. But there is a reason why that tension is designed to be that way. So many companies will structure their go-to-market in different ways. But you have to always kind of guarantee that disagreement. You have to have different timelines, different accountability, different definitions of success. It's a bummer, but people are typically shocked when trust is lost. It's bound to happen, especially when they're incentivized over budget, over things that they have to fight for.
No. And here's the thing, and this is where I will step back on every single person that either points the finger at a CRO and points the finger at CMO, and I will point internally at myself. And the hard truth is that the CEO, the board, whoever it is,
Hmm.
didn't create this misalignment by accident. We are responsible. Like, the owner of the company, at varying levels of the company, are the ones responsible for this, is because we bake it in. You have two executives that overlap responsibility with different scorecards. That's like telling someone to score a touchdown on a baseball field. And then you said, you know what, figure that shit out. That's not leadership, right? Like that's
Score a touchdown on a baseball.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. That's not leadership. So it's really not their fault, right? Like they're the siblings of, this family, this company family, and the leaders, aka the parents, are just, hey, you know what, figured it out. You
Yeah.
guys are fighting, figure it out, but we really need to get to vacation on time. We need to
Yeah.
get to school on time. Figure it out. Brush your teeth. I don't know how you do it. I don't know. I don't care whose toothbrush you use. I don't care whose toothpaste it is. I don't care
Yeah.
which stool that you stand on. These are all personal references, mind you. But figure it out, because I need
Yeah.
to drop you off at school without any helping hand whatsoever.
And I think, if we were to, we can kind of reference that same sort of thing where we need, as leadership, oftentimes, like you said yourself, in that CEO position, we need this to be resolved. I think CMOs and CROs have to actually say what they need and what they want. I think if we were to look at this from the executive standpoint, CMOs want staying power and relevance. We've covered this many times, but the CMOs have short tenure. I think that's a scary thing, and definitely something that they want. They want to be able to stick around in that
Especially
role.
because they're incentivized for long term.
Yeah,
So they have the shortest.
exactly.
They have the
Yeah.
CMOs have the shortest tenure, but they're incentivized for long-term growth of the company, but they're the ones who get cut the fastest. Make it make sense.
Exactly. And on the flip side, CROs, they just want predictability and control. They want to know reliably what their pipeline is going to look like. They want control over the teams that they're working with, over the technology that they need to execute on it. I think realistically, they just want to survive the next board meeting and not be turned into a scapegoat. Yeah, they don't want to have the finger
quarter.
pointed at. Exactly. But if you're walking in there, things aren't looking good. Somebody's got to take the blame, and that's when I think that tension initially starts.
It's like what Marshawn Lynch said, right? I'm just here not to get fined. Like that's
Yeah.
that's just all I'm trying to do. I'm just here not to get fined. And honestly, I don't even think it's about alignment or agreeing anymore, to tell you the truth. Like I think CMOs and CROs know that we are incentivized for different things, right? It's
Yeah.
about designing a business GTM motion where neither role has to protect themselves at the expense of the other. And honestly, until that happens, this isn't a bug, it's a feature in your company. Like
Yeah.
this is not going to be resolved with how many 50 kumbayas and how many leadership retreats that you're going to go on. It's not going to get resolved because it's a feature. You people and companies have made this part of their ecosystem, part of their culture, and really the only way to kind of stop it is to design a motion that benefits both.
Yeah, and if you are a CMO, CR listening to this, this isn't about how to align. It's about to make sure that your role is structurally set up for success. So, you're probably never going to agree. You're probably never going to align. You will always likely be incentivized to compete and butt heads with your CRO, with your CMO. But really, it's about, as a CMO, as a CRO, am I set up for success? Am I set up to win? Am I going to get what I need out of my role and out of my team to make this a reality, to make a successful company? I think that's kind of the question that we need to highlight. And you're not bad at what you do. It's not you, it's the system.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, and I think CMOs and CROs, like, once again, I think I've said it before, like they don't disagree because they're bad leaders, right? I mean, there might be bad leaders out there,
Yeah,
but
that's possible too.
right,
Yeah.
right. Generally, the disagreement part is probably not because one leader isn't doing as much to keep their job as the next leader. Everyone wants to not get fired. I feel like that's a universal kind of thing. However, the the disagreement is there because the system is rewarding it. And until companies stop designing these kind of leadership competing incentives, this fight's not going anywhere. So really what you have to do is you have to figure out how do you kind of, work inside the chaos a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if you're a CRO and you're a CMO and you're listening to this, I would love to hear what are you incentivized for?
Yeah, I want to hit what you said because I think that's an important thing. Why are CROs and CMOs incentivized to disagree? Because their company rewards it. That's why. That's a really powerful takeaway that you said there, Raja. And I mean, if you are listening and you are in one of these roles, We would love to hear your thoughts on this and kind of what has been the driver behind this incentive, maybe in your own company, or what you've seen when you've come into these board meetings or these leadership meetings, presented your findings, and they contrast or maybe even contradict what the other person is saying. Love to know how you guys are navigating that. But with that being said, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Call It RevOps. Again, in 2026, we're going to be diving a lot more into discussions like these. So if you enjoyed it, be sure to listen to the past ones, but also tune in for future episodes. And we'll see you next time.